Have you ever felt like your body is slowing you down after 65? Like the simple things you used to do with ease are now a struggle? You're not alone. As we age, many of us face changes in mobility, and it can feel like our world is shrinking. But what if I told you that limited mobility doesn't have to limit your life? What if there's a way to reclaim your strength, find new passions, and live a fulfilling life, no matter your age? In this video, we're diving into 7 powerful strategies that can help you maintain your mobility, improve your balance, and continue to thrive as you grow older. You'll hear inspiring stories from individuals between 65 and 85 years old who faced similar challenges and found creative ways to overcome them. Whether you're dealing with arthritis, recovering from an injury, or simply adjusting to the natural process of aging, these practical tips and expert advice will empower you to take control of your well-being. By watching this video until the end, you'll discover simple yet effective exercises that can be done at home, how aquatic workouts can heal both body and mind, and why embracing walking aids could unlock a new world of independence. You'll also learn the importance of strength training, balance exercises, and how listening to your body can lead to a healthier, happier lifestyle. This isn't just about maintaining your mobility. It's about discovering new possibilities, connecting with others, and living life with confidence and joy. Stick with us, and let's explore how you can start making meaningful changes today. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Story number 1. Practicing chair-based exercise, reclaiming movement, reclaiming joy. Maria, at 68 years old, had always loved to dance. It wasn't just a hobby for her, it was a part of her soul, a way she connected to the world around her. Dancing had been her sanctuary, her escape, her joy. The rhythm of music and the movement of her body made her feel alive, vibrant, and free. She could express everything she felt without saying a word. It was the language of her heart, a language she spoke fluently and with passion. But as the years went by, osteoarthritis crept into her life like an unwelcome shadow, stealing away the very thing that made her feel whole. The simple act of walking, once effortless, became an agonizing task. With each step, a sharp pain reminded her that her body was no longer the same. Maria felt like she was losing a part of herself. A piece of her spirit seemed to be slipping away with each passing day. It was as if her world was shrinking, the walls closing in, and the freedom she once had was now out of reach. The thought of never being able to dance again was almost too much to bear. She began to wonder if this was the beginning of the end for her. Would she lose her independence, her strength, her sense of who she was? It felt like a cruel joke. Her doctor, however, offered a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. He suggested chair-based exercises. At first, Maria was skeptical. Could something so simple, so sedentary, really help? She couldn't fathom how it could ever replace the joy, the release, the freedom that dancing once brought her. Her heart sank with the thought that this might be the end of her dancing days. But what else could she do? Desperation nudged her to try. What happened next took her completely by surprise. Chair yoga, something she had dismissed as too passive, became her lifeline. It wasn't the same as dancing, of course. But with each movement, with every stretch and every breath, Maria rediscovered something she thought she had lost: connection, strength, and most importantly, joy. Chair yoga didn't just improve her physical health, it revived her spirit. It helped her regain some of her strength, restore her flexibility, and maintain her balance, all without putting too much strain on her aching joints. She could feel the burn in her muscles, the same kind of challenge she used to get from dancing, but now with far less discomfort. And then, something unexpected happened. Maria began to find ways to incorporate some of her old dance moves into the exercises. With the chair as her anchor, she started to move to the rhythm of her memories, adding small twirls, fluid gestures, and gentle sways. It wasn't a full-blown dance, but it was enough. It was enough to remind her that she could still express herself, still feel the music, still connect with the world in a way that felt right for her now. There was a beauty in that small victory, a victory that was far more meaningful than anything she had achieved in her younger years. But the magic didn't stop there. In her class, Maria found a community of people who shared her struggles and triumphs. They weren't just fellow participants. They were a support system, a family. Together, they celebrated each small achievement, each step forward. Maria found herself laughing again, smiling at the newfound friendships that grew stronger with each class. It was a reminder that joy didn't just come from the past. It could be found again, even in the most unexpected places. And that joy was contagious. She learned that, even in the face of adversity, there is always room for hope, always space for new beginnings. And most of all, that movement, no matter how small, could still bring her the freedom she thought she had lost forever. Maria didn't just reclaim movement that day, she reclaimed her life. She found a new way to dance, one that was uniquely her own, and she embraced it with all the love and passion that had once made her a dancer at heart. Story number 2. The Power of Aquatic Exercise. John's journey after his hip surgery was far from easy. Although the surgery itself had been a success, the recovery process proved to be a grueling battle. At 75 years old, John found himself confronting more than just physical pain. He was terrified. Terrified that even the slightest misstep could cause him to fall again, to injure himself once more, and to lose the independence he had fought so hard to maintain. Fear of re-injury consumed him, paralyzing him in ways that went beyond the physical. He became afraid of his own body, feeling as if it had betrayed him. Slowly, the weight of his vulnerability grew heavier, and with each passing day, he withdrew more from exercise. His muscles began to stiffen, his joints became more rigid, and he felt an overwhelming sense of weakness creeping in. His body, which had once carried him through decades of life, now felt like a cage. The simple, everyday tasks that once seemed effortless now drained him. John had always prided himself on his vitality and independence, but now he was struggling just to maintain his balance in a world that felt increasingly uncertain and foreign. His once active lifestyle had been reduced to the confines of his own home, and with every painful step, his self-confidence crumbled. When his physical therapist first recommended aquatic exercise, John's initial reaction was one of reluctance. Swimming had once been something he enjoyed in his younger days, but now, at his age, with his body having aged and deteriorated, the thought of getting into the water seemed both daunting and humiliating. How could he possibly manage such a thing when even basic movements felt so foreign to him? He couldn't imagine himself swimming like he once did, gliding effortlessly through the water. The idea of exposing his limitations in front of others filled him with shame and embarrassment. He couldn't bear the thought of struggling in front of people, of being vulnerable in such a visible way. But despite his reservations, his therapist reassured him, emphasizing how even the gentlest movements in the water could make an enormous difference. She spoke of the buoyancy of the water, how it would support him, reduce the strain on his joints, and alleviate his pain. Reluctantly, John agreed to give it a try, though he still carried his skepticism like a weight in his heart. And so, with a mixture of hesitation and hope, John stepped into the water. What happened next, however, was nothing short of transformative. As soon as he submerged himself, the familiar sensation of weightlessness began to soothe his aching body. The water cradled him, lifting the burdens of gravity that had made every step a battle. For the first time in months, John felt a flicker of something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. The gentle resistance of the water worked with his movements, allowing him to rebuild strength he thought was beyond his reach. Each movement, no matter how small, made him feel more connected to his body, more in control of his destiny. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. In the water, John began to rediscover something deeper than just physical strength. He found a sense of freedom that felt like a breath of fresh air. It was more than the relief of pain or the restoration of his body. It was a rebirth of his spirit. The buoyancy of the water was like a balm for his soul, soothing his fears and helping him push past the mental blocks that had held him captive for so long. The stiffness and rigidity that had consumed him melted away, replaced by a newfound fluidity and ease. John began to realize that this was not just a physical recovery, it was an emotional one as well. With every lap, with every careful movement, he felt his mental and emotional barriers begin to dissolve. He had feared that he would never move with grace again, that the joy of feeling free in his own body was gone. But in that quiet healing space, surrounded by the water's embrace, he found a part of himself that had been buried under layers of fear and doubt. It wasn't just about physical healing, it was about rediscovering the joy of movement, the peace of being present in his body, and the joy of overcoming the limitations he had placed on himself. The water became John's sanctuary. It was his haven, a place where he could let go of his fears, reconnect with the strength he had within, and find comfort in the gentle, soothing rhythm of his movements. It wasn't just about rebuilding his body, it was about finding hope, lightness, and the strength to move forward, no matter what age he was. In the water, John rediscovered not just his body, but his spirit, and for that, he was forever grateful. Story number 3. Walking Aids, Your Allies in Mobility. Sarah, a vibrant woman in her 80s, had long been adamant about not using a walker. To her, it represented surrender, a symbol of aging she was not ready to accept. The idea of relying on something to help her walk felt like admitting defeat, like a silent proclamation of her growing frailty. It was a deeply personal matter, tied to her self-image and how she feared others might see her. She didn't want to be viewed as old, as someone who had already begun to fade. For years, despite the subtle signs that her balance was faltering, she had pushed through with sheer willpower, convinced that if she just avoided the walker, she could keep the appearance of strength and vitality. But deep down, she knew. She had felt the unsteady moments, the near-miss falls that threatened to steal her confidence and, in some ways, her joy. Then one fateful afternoon, as she was walking to the grocery store, it happened. Her foot caught on the uneven pavement, and for a terrifying moment, she lost control. The shock of it hit her harder than any fall could have. It wasn't just about the physical danger, it was the emotional toll that left her shaken to her core. The fear and realization that her pride had clouded her judgment, that her stubbornness had been standing in the way of her well-being, overwhelmed her. In that moment, Sarah saw the truth. Her desire to avoid looking old was, ironically, what was putting her in harm's way. It wasn't about looking frail, it was about holding on to life, about living in a way that didn't make her feel unsafe every time she took a step. After that moment of reckoning, Sarah's perspective shifted. She finally embraced the walker, not as a symbol of giving up, but as an empowering tool, something that restored her ability to live her life with dignity and confidence. It was the key that unlocked her freedom, allowing her to move without fear, to stand tall in her independence once again. And that, to Sarah, was more important than any appearance or judgment. The walker became her ally, a steadfast companion that supported her on her walks around the neighborhood, visits to the farmer's market, and the quiet strolls to the park where she could sit, breathe, and just be. Her world opened up once more, not because she gave up, but because she chose to be kind to herself and face her fears head-on. She didn't just reclaim her mobility, she reclaimed her life. Story number 4. Strength Training for Stability. David's legs had become a constant source of frustration and fear. At 78, they felt like they were slowly turning against him, betraying him with every step he tried to take. The simple, everyday tasks that once seemed effortless, getting up from a chair, climbing the stairs, even carrying a few grocery bags, had become daunting struggles. It was as if his world was shrinking around him. Each step he took, each movement he made, a painful reminder that his body was slipping further and further away from him. There was a quiet, nagging voice in the back of his mind telling him that his best years were behind him and that the inevitable decline into immobility had already begun. The thought of never being able to live fully again was both heartbreaking and terrifying. He turned to the internet, hoping to find some kind of solution, but the exercises he found were too difficult, too overwhelming. He tried, and then failed. The frustration was palpable, and slowly, that quiet voice began to grow louder. "Maybe this is it," it whispered. "Maybe this is all you're capable of now." He was scared that he would only continue to decline, trapped in a cycle of weakness and despair, feeling like a shell of the man he once was. His self-esteem, once built on the strength of his body and the pride of his independence, began to crumble. Then, just as he was about to give up, his doctor offered a glimmer of hope. "Why don't you work with a personal trainer?" the doctor suggested, someone who specialized in training older adults. David was hesitant at first. The idea of working with a stranger, someone who might push him too hard, scared him. But his doctor reassured him, telling him the trainer would understand his concerns, his limitations. So, with a mixture of skepticism and hope, David agreed. The first meeting was a revelation. The trainer was kind, patient, and empathetic. She didn't see a frail, aging man. She saw someone who could regain strength and vitality with the right guidance. She crafted a plan just for him, focusing on gentle resistance training, using light weights and resistance bands. It was an approach that started slow, making sure David felt comfortable with each movement, with each stretch. The goal wasn't to push him too hard, but to build his strength, step by step, at his own pace. At first, it felt like an uphill battle. Each session was a struggle. His muscles ached in ways they hadn't for years. Some days, the progress seemed agonizingly slow, and David wondered if he would ever see any real improvement. But as he kept showing up, as he kept pushing through the discomfort, something inside him began to shift. Slowly but surely, he started to notice small victories. Small but powerful victories. He could sit and stand from his chair with a little more ease. He could carry his grocery bags without wincing. He could climb a set of stairs without feeling his heart race in fear of falling. The most important change, however, wasn't just physical. It was the emotional transformation. David realized that building strength wasn't only about his body. It was about his mind, his spirit. The journey to reclaiming his strength became a journey of mental resilience. With each step forward, he grew stronger not only in his legs but also in his confidence. He began to believe in himself again, in his ability to regain control of his body. His world started to expand again, and he felt the weight of fear lifting. David found joy in the simple act of playing with his grandchildren again, something he had almost given up on. He could lift objects with ease, the strain and worry of hurting himself no longer present. Stairs, which once felt like an insurmountable challenge, became just another part of his day. His body wasn't betraying him anymore. It was working with him, growing stronger by the day. He even joined a local hiking group, something he thought was a distant dream, a memory of youth he could never revisit. But now, there he was, hiking with others, feeling the fresh air and the strength in his legs, a feeling he hadn't had in years. David's story is a testament to the power of perseverance, of reclaiming one's life with slow and steady effort. It's a reminder that it's never too late to change, to rebuild, to regain the strength and independence that once defined us. It's a call to action, a reminder that the body and mind are not separate but are connected in ways we can only truly appreciate when we work to strengthen them both. The journey might not be easy, but the rewards, oh, the rewards, are worth every drop of sweat, every moment of doubt. Story number 5. The importance of regular stretching. Eleanor had been living with the daily torment of stiff and aching joints for years. By the time she turned 80, her body had begun to feel like a prison. Chronic pain had woven itself into every part of her life, limiting her mobility and turning even the simplest of tasks into monumental challenges. Getting dressed, tying her shoes, or bending down to pick something up were struggles she once took for granted, now daunting obstacles that drained her spirit. She found herself retreating into stillness, avoiding movement because it only seemed to make the pain worse. The thought of stretching, something she'd always associated with the limber bodies of youth, seemed like an impossible feat at her age. "It's too late for me," she thought bitterly. "What good would stretching do now?" But her doctor, a compassionate and patient man who truly understood the complexities of aging, explained to her that stretching was, in fact, vital for her. He gently reassured her that stretching wasn't just for the young or the active. It was a lifeline for seniors, helping to preserve flexibility, alleviate pain, and maintain the body's functionality. "It's never too late to start," he said with a warmth that melted Eleanor's doubts. His words resonated deeply, sparking a small flicker of hope in her heart, but also an undeniable fear. Fear that trying could only lead to more injury, more disappointment. Her doctor suggested a few gentle stretches she could attempt at home, and he referred her to a physical therapist to guide her along the way. At first, Eleanor hesitated. She was so used to pain, so accustomed to the tight grip of discomfort in her body, that she couldn't fathom a life without it. Yet, with a deep sigh and the tiniest glimmer of courage, she decided to try. At first, every stretch felt alien and a bit terrifying. The fear of exacerbating her pain lingered in every movement. But something incredible began to happen. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Eleanor began to feel a shift. Her body, which she had feared would break further, seemed to be softening, loosening up in ways she hadn't felt in years. The stiffness in her joints, which had once felt like concrete, began to ease. The sharp, relentless pain that had held her hostage softened into something more manageable. For the first time in ages, she could move without wincing. She could bend down to tend to her beloved garden, a hobby she had once feared she would never be able to enjoy again. The sense of accomplishment, of joy, that flooded her heart as she knelt on the earth was nothing short of miraculous. But it wasn't just the physical transformation that moved her, it was the emotional release that came with it. Stretching wasn't just about limbering her muscles. It was about releasing years of built-up tension, frustration, and defeat. The emotional weight that had quietly accumulated in her body was gradually lifted, and with each stretch, Eleanor felt lighter, freer, like she was shedding years of pent-up grief and frustration. And then, one glorious afternoon, Eleanor was able to go for a walk with her dog again. A simple, yet profoundly meaningful act. The ease with which she strolled through the neighborhood, feeling the fresh air on her skin without the constant reminder of pain, filled her heart with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She was no longer a prisoner of her own body. She realized that stretching wasn't merely an exercise, it was a profound practice of self-care, one that nurtured both her body and soul. She had rediscovered something far more precious than flexibility, a renewed sense of possibility, of living in her body with confidence and ease, despite her age. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. In the end, Eleanor learned an invaluable truth. It's never too late to start caring for yourself, to reclaim your body and your life. Stretching had become not just a routine, but a form of loving kindness she gave to herself, a reminder that, no matter how old we are worthy of feeling good, of feeling whole again. Story number 6. Balance training. Robert's recent fall completely shattered his sense of security, and it sent waves of fear crashing through his confidence. At 72, every day became a struggle, a constant worry lingering in the back of his mind. What if I fall again? The fear of losing his balance kept him in a constant state of hesitation. His body, which once moved freely with purpose, now felt like a cage. He was terrified of stepping outside alone, afraid that every step could be his last misstep. He found himself caught in a vicious cycle, bound by his fear and the paralyzing weight of inactivity. Each day felt like an unspoken battle against a growing isolation, with no way out. When his daughter suggested Tai Chi, Robert scoffed at the idea. What could that slow, gentle exercise do for me? He thought. He didn't think it would work, nor did he have the self-assurance to believe that something so simple could help. He was embarrassed about his lack of coordination, the trembling uncertainty that had gripped him since the fall. But, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he decided to give it a shot. At first, it felt awkward, frustrating even. He didn't think he could ever get the hang of it. But as time went on, Robert realized something profound. Tai Chi was never about speed or force. It wasn't just a slow-motion routine. It was a dance of strength, balance, and coordination, flowing from within. With every graceful movement, he began to feel a grounding sensation. It was like his feet were finally connecting to the earth beneath him, and his heart was syncing with a rhythm he had long forgotten. For the first time in months, Robert felt more than just physically stable. He felt emotionally anchored too. His confidence began to rise, piece by piece. Each movement, though slow, became a declaration of his ability to regain control over his own body and over his life. The fear that had once held him prisoner began to loosen its grip. Slowly, he stopped dreading the idea of moving around. He started walking with his head held high, no longer haunted by the looming fear of falling. But it didn't stop there. The transformation was so powerful that Robert couldn't keep it to himself. He felt compelled to share this newfound joy with others, so he began leading a Tai Chi class at his local senior center. What began as a personal journey of overcoming fear blossomed into something far greater, a chance to help others who felt the same way he once did. He guided them through the motions, teaching them the principles of strength and balance, just as he had learned. And in return, they gave him a sense of purpose and camaraderie that he had desperately missed. The park, once a place of anxiety, became his sanctuary again. He wandered its paths, the gentle breeze brushing his face, with no fear of falling. Each step, each movement, was infused with the empowerment that Tai Chi had given him. It was more than just a form of exercise. It was a reminder of his resilience. The community of people who shared the same journey wrapped him in a blanket of understanding, lifting him in ways he hadn't imagined possible. For the first time in a long while, Robert felt connected to something larger than himself. He wasn't just an aging man who had fallen. He was a living, breathing testament to the power of overcoming fear and reclaiming one's independence. No longer confined by the walls of his anxiety, Robert had stepped into the light of empowerment. He had found his balance, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually. It was a triumph over the isolation he had feared would consume him. Through Tai Chi, Robert had rediscovered his strength, and with it, the joy of living freely again. Story number 7. Listen to your body and pace yourself. Margaret was fiercely determined to maintain an active lifestyle well into her 70s. She believed that staying in motion was the key to preserving her health, her vitality, and her sense of independence. Every day, without fail, she laced up her sneakers and set off on a walk. But there was a catch. She often pushed herself far beyond what her body was telling her. She would ignore the persistent aches, the slight stiffness in her joints, the twinges of discomfort that were her body's way of whispering, "Slow down." Instead of listening to these signals, she would press on, driven by the idea that more was always better. What Margaret didn't realize at first was that by ignoring these subtle cues, she was doing more harm than good. She'd find herself exhausted, frustrated, sometimes even nursing an injury that would set her back for days, or worse, weeks. It was a heartbreaking cycle. She'd push herself too hard, only to find herself sidelined with pain, unable to move the way she wanted. Over time, the exhaustion began to overshadow the joy of walking, and the frustration of being laid up with injuries left her feeling discouraged. But as the years passed, Margaret started to understand something crucial. Staying active wasn't about proving how much she could endure or pushing her body to its breaking point. True fitness, she realized, wasn't about relentless perseverance or rigid goals. It was about finding a sustainable rhythm, a balance that allowed her to keep moving without damaging herself. It was about learning how to respect her body, rather than fighting against it. The turning point came when Margaret finally accepted that listening to her body was not a sign of weakness, it was an act of wisdom. She began to pay closer attention to the signals of fatigue, the subtle aching in her muscles, and the gentle pangs that indicated it was time for a break. Slowly, she started adjusting her routine. Instead of pushing herself to complete long, strenuous walks, she opted for shorter, more frequent walks throughout the day. She built in rest breaks, allowing herself to pause and catch her breath, without feeling like she was failing. What she discovered was profound. These shorter walks didn't just prevent injury, they enhanced her experience. She could move at a pace that felt good to her body, one step at a time, savoring each moment instead of rushing to finish. Margaret learned to appreciate the beauty around her more deeply. The rustling of the leaves, the soft chirping of birds, the warmth of the sun on her face. With each step, she felt a deeper connection to herself and her surroundings. She no longer felt the weight of pushing too hard or the fear of falling behind. Instead, she felt free to enjoy life's little moments without pressure, free to simply be present. Most importantly, Margaret learned the power of self-compassion. She began to recognize that rest and recovery were just as crucial to her well-being as exercise. Permitting herself to slow down, to take a moment to rest, became an act of self-love. She realized that by honoring her body's needs, she could preserve her energy, avoid injuries, and still maintain an active lifestyle that nourished her body and soul. In the quiet moments of rest, she learned the joy of mindful movement, appreciating what her body could do, rather than lamenting what it couldn't. It was no longer about what she couldn't achieve, but about being grateful for the gift of each moment. As Margaret learned to listen to her body, she found a new kind of joy in movement. One that didn't come from striving for more, but from simply being present, moving at a pace that felt right, and honoring herself along the way. The joy of mindful movement, the peace that came with understanding her body's limits, and the freedom from pushing herself too hard became her path to well-being. It was a journey of self-acceptance, and in that acceptance, Margaret found a deeper, more enduring happiness than she ever imagined. As we wrap up today's story, we've seen how Margaret's journey of learning to listen to her body has led her to a deeper understanding of what it truly means to stay healthy and active. It's not about pushing limits, it's about finding balance, embracing rest, and honoring the needs of our bodies. So, what have you learned from Margaret's experience? What's one thing you can bring into your own life, whether it's slowing down, practicing self-compassion, or simply being more present in each moment? I'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to share one thing you've learned and we'll start practicing in your own life in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to leave your comment, and please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories and helpful tips on living your best life. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you.